Today I'm going to be turning this rough walnut board into a beautiful serving tray. But unfortunately it didn't go without a few mistakes. As you know, with woodworking, sometimes you may have to just switch gears. So in this video, there's also a bonus project, so make sure to stick around. Today we're going to be making this tray out of walnut, and the walnut that I have here is just a random piece that I've had for years, and I thought now is a good time to use it. It does have a lot of sapwood on it, but I feel like I can probably use this to make a really cool design. I'm going to start by cutting down the pieces to a more manageable size. It's going to be a little bit longer than what the tray is actually going to end up being. That way I can kind of cut it back later. Now these boards were just a little bit too wide to actually go on my jointer. So what I'm going to do is cut these down to a different width. It's not going off of a square edge right now, but at least something that will fit through my jointer. I cut these in a way so that the extra that's going to be left over can be used as the sides. Now you can see here I kind of worked with the sapwood to make this really cool design in the center, almost like a little river table style. And these pieces here I'm just going to be cutting down so they fit in the jointer, but they will also be used for the sides. And I don't really want any sapwood on the sides, so I'm going to try to cut all this off. Alright, so now that the pieces are all cut down to size and they're going to fit in my jointer, let's get these boards nice and flat and square. Now, if you're wondering what this maple piece is for, I want to do a nice little detail around the actual perimeter of the, I guess, tray in maple. I don't know. You'll kind of see later. Milling content. My goal here was to make sure that all the sides, including that maple piece, are all going to be the same thickness. And then I'm going to do the bottoms later because those don't have to be the same thickness as the sides. They can be whatever they end up being. So I'm having a problem with this board having this edge that I want to keep. I got a lot of the sapwood here, but very little here, so I want to almost cut this on an angle so I can try to preserve as much of the sapwood as I can. Funny enough, I went to go square this up just to take a look because I did joint this side, and it's about 1/4 inch of an angle that I need to cut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to joint the other side. That way I can use that 1/4 inch cut along here. So I'll go tight here to 1/4 inch on the bigger side. I'm going to go ahead and joint this board down on the other side now. Well, you heard the man. This is going to try to preserve some of that sapwood so we still have that nice wide looking, sapwood river in the center of the tray. So we need to joint the one side that I originally didn't joint, and now we're going to go ahead and cut that 1/4 inch here from 0 to 1/4 inch. So it kind of cuts off that extra bit and makes it square. Now don't be alarmed, I'm not cutting all this sapwood off. It's actually the other side that I'm trying to preserve, so that little bit that's being cut off is fine. Now I'm just going to square up the other board here. That way we have two pieces that are nice and square. Okay, so now we want to have this nice river table in the center. The best thing that I think you can do, and I hope I am right when I say this, is going and jointing them while they're touching each other, like kind of folding them into each other, and then running it along the fence to joint the two ends so that they are going to be identical. That way you're going to have a nice tight fit between the two pieces, and it's not going to have any gaps because they were jointed separately and differently. Now you can see here I have barely any sapwood on these pieces. Like the corner is literally, you can see it's so tiny. And so I'm going to use a biscuit jointer here. This is my first time ever using a biscuit jointer. And I'm going to use this only because I really don't want these to slide at all, and I want to make sure they're perfectly in line. That way when I'm planing them after this, it's taking off the minimum amount I need so I'm not losing that sapwood. And, first time biscuit joining, so that was kind of cool as well. And of course, Type Bond bottles do not ever want to come off. But let's glue this bad boy up, and we'll let her sit. Now, as I am starting to tighten this up, I noticed that there is some glue squeeze out that is missing. So let's take this apart and add a little bit extra glue because I want to make sure it's got a nice, good surface there. And I want it to be nice and clean. Now, just in case there is any gaps, I'm going to add some of the sawdust from when I was cutting these. That way, it will kind of fill in the gap with the sawdust and the glue. Just a little tip in case you want to make sure that those seams look perfect and there's no openings. But now that we have that kind of glued up, let's go ahead and start on these sides. So I'm going to cut these down. Now, it's not going to be this short, but because I'm adding that little maple transition piece, I need to cut them down to be shorter so that the maple piece can get sandwiched in between them. So we're going to go ahead and cut these down to about 1.5 inches. And then that way we can glue everything up. And with the maple piece, obviously you can see this piece has some character and different colors in it. My goal is to make sure that I can just keep the actual light maple, and luckily I did. So let's go ahead and lay all these out. So these two pieces are going to be the ends where the handle is. And I mean, they look fine, nothing special about them, but these two pieces, oh boy, these are the sides. And look how perfect I was able to kind of make this, I don't know, like swoosh when it comes to the sapwood. I think it looks so cool. So it kind of goes up, then the maple piece there, and then kind of continues on the top side of it. And no, I'm not gluing these all together. I am leaving the joints between the different pieces, just no glue. So it's all good to go. All right, next day, let's remove all these pieces and we're gonna make sure that we kind of clean these up. So that's the base, looks good. Let's go ahead and work with the sides, and you'll kind of see what I mean here is I didn't glue between the sides so I can pop them out like that. That just saves me clamps. And obviously I need to clean these up and get all this tape off of here. Now I'm just going to be using a paint scraper to remove most of these little glue bubbles. But let's go ahead and get started on making these handles. So I want to try using a template, and this way I can kind of copy this template to future projects if I make these trays again. I'm going to just give you guys a fair warning, this does not go well. But I'm basically trying to make this handle, so I'm using a Forstner bit to basically plan out the sides, and then I'm going to have them connect in the middle. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the Forstner bit to kind of make some marks here just so I know where to set them. I'm going to drill through, but I'm not going to go all the way through because I want to make sure I don't have any blowout on the bottom, which technically, yes, you could just put this up against a table and it won't have the blowout. But in my case, I just poked the hole through with this little pick and then went from the bottom side, and I was able to go ahead and make a nice clean cut. Oh, shirtless Ian, hello. Now I'm just using a jigsaw to kind of connect the two circles. And then what my plan here is I wanted to go back with my router and make that nice and clean finish because, you know, I've got a router, I'm gonna make it look clean. And it kind of worked, but to be honest, I ended up cutting more than I should have because I just had a janky setup. I tried sanding it out. It ended up just looking like crap. So one side was kind of good, the other side was a little bigger. So what I ended up doing was just cutting the template in half. So then I would have to basically flip the template over to use it on both sides. But let's go ahead and plane down these sides and the bottom to their final finish. I was having a problem with some snipe, so I'm trying to lift the receiving end here to kind of make it so it doesn't have as much snipe, but I was able to kind of make it work. Now this is where the problem begins. I started to cut all these sides. I would just pick a random side and I would just cut a 45-degree angle or just over a 45-degree angle, having the piece upright like you see. And then after this, I wanted to cut the base down to its final width. That way I can go ahead and line up the actual miter with the edge of the base and then mark the other side so I know where I need to make that next miter cut on the same piece. Now back to the chop saw, thinking that all this is going to go perfectly fine. I cut my next miter, all's good, only to find out that it is not cutting these straight at all. So now I have to cut all my miters again, but this time I'm going to have the saw set on like a 45 bevel. And I also have to cut the bottom again because now the length and width is all different. But I mean, nothing else could really go wrong. So let's go ahead and get started on these handles. I'm just using the template to kind of have a good idea on where to start my Forstner bit holes. And I decided to kind of go through with the Forstner bit to drill out as much material as I can. That way I have less material to have to take off with the router. And now let's go ahead and just use a trim bit, make this nice and clean. We got the template to go off of. Oh, and he's going the wrong direction, and the dust is in the face, and there goes the template. So what would a professional woodworker do in this moment? Well, you guessed it. Let's start a different project. Don't worry, we do get back to the tray, but the cutoffs that we had from the sides, I left long, and I was able to cut these down to make a little coaster set. So I'm going to go ahead and split these in half on the table saw. little bit of a sketchy cut, but I was able to get it done safely. Now, nothing could go wrong with this project after we're just trying to avoid the other project that had something go wrong, right? That's still flying?
Yeah.
Oh, it's still survived?
Yeah.
Well, it's not 3.5 inches anymore. So for some context on what happened, I was noticing that there was some snipe going on, so I tried to have these go on a little bit of an angle, and well, it kind of got stuck in there and flew out the actual infeed across the room and hit the wall and obviously damaged that corner. But I tried to kind of make it intentional and make it a little detail. But let's go ahead and get started on the coaster base. So this, I'm going to try to cut some 45-degree angles in so I can have the pieces kind of slot in there. And the first couple cuts I was able to do on my miter saw pretty safely, but the other cuts were going to be pretty sketchy. So I decided to make this really janky miter gauge, as you can see behind, and I ended up screwing up the spacing on a few of them and also the depth on one of them. So I'm just going to now put this project on hold and let's get back to the tray. Okay, so my idea was to use a spindle sander to kind of clean up that inside edge, and now it's a little bit bigger than what I was originally hoping for, but this kind of did the job and honestly was probably the best option in the first place. And don't judge that I'm using a bigger washer on top. When I bought this off of somebody, they only had the bigger washer, so I may 3D print them or something one day. Okay, now moving on to the other handle, we're going to go ahead and start with the Forstner bit like we did with the first one. This time we're just going to cut the two sides. And look, the template is actually coming in handy. It's being used so that I don't blow at the backside. Now I'm going to use some 2x4s just to kind of raise this up so that my blade doesn't hit the tabletop, and use my jigsaw to connect the two holes. That way I can come back with the router, clean it up. Now check out this beautiful setup I got going on. This is to make it so the piece can't slide, and I'm going to be using my router. And just make sure you wait till the bit stops before you let it up, because luckily it didn't do any damage, but that could have been bad. Now the bit that I'm using in my router is way too long. You can hear the router screaming. I also had an issue with keeping the router flat, so I added this blue Bristol board in between, which kind of worked out. Flipped it over, used a flush trim bit that was a way better size, and it was all good. And then I just came back with the spindle sander and I attached them together with these little clamps just to make sure that they get sanded equally. But now it's all cleaned up. Let's go ahead and start the glue up. Now, if you're wondering why I'm laughing, is because this went horribly wrong. I'm trying this trick, which I've seen people use. I've never really done many miter glue ups because I always suck at miters. But you apparently tape the miters while they're flat like this and you butt them into each other. And then that way you can kind of fold them into each other and it will make sure the miters are nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and apply some glue. Make sure I spread it out nice and evenly here. And let's just watch the pain begin. Now that you guys have been watching this video for a little while, I hope you guys have been enjoying it so far, and if you have, I would really appreciate a like. By the end of the video, if you do change your mind, you can always take it back. Thank you guys very much. It really means a lot. So at this point you might have realized I didn't glue up the ends, but no. I realized that the glue that was already drying in this joint, so let's reapply some extra glue. And then I realized, okay, well the ends aren't glued up, so maybe I should add some glue here. I gave up on trying to hold it up, so let's just lay it all back down. Hopefully the other glue joints don't start to dry up. Now I don't recall if people pre-tape this or not, but this is me taping up now that joint that I just added. And I'm trying to scrape off all the glue because I've made this type of tray before and the glue squeeze out inside is a pain in the butt to remove. So I'm trying to get as much of the cleanup done now, but it is drying really fast. And I had the bright idea of let's connect the base. Now, if you guys are wondering, yes, technically this base is just going to be a butt joint. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I've done it before and it worked perfectly fine for years now. I know expansion, contraction, it should be rabbited, and I probably would do like some sort of dado or something, but here's me also struggling now trying to glue this up and realizing I don't know how I'm gonna glue all sides without getting my hands dirty, but I can avoid, touching the glue. Just kidding, right there I have my hand full of glue, so that's great. Now I'm trying to make sure I hold it in a way that I'm not gonna get glue on my hand while I apply it on this side. and I grab the freaking glued end. Beautiful. Some glue on my t-shirt. It's a nice t-shirt too. Okay, so let's go ahead and drop this in onto the base. Fits nice and snug. Perfect. Gotta get all this glue off my hands. Now let's go ahead and clamp this up, and there goes the water bottle. Now I'm gonna bring over some pipe clamps, and I realized there's not really anywhere for me to clamp this, so I'm doing some really janky angled clamp just to kind of get it somewhat, got a little bit of pressure going on there. But let's go ahead and try the other side, and this one didn't even fit any better than the other side. We're just gonna try to jerry rig it as best as we can. Now, if you're wondering why I'm using the world's largest clamps, this is the only size I have left, are these massive clamps. I should probably buy some smaller ones because this thing wanted to wobble every direction because these clamps are like 5 feet long. And let me try to get some of this glue squeeze out done, but no, everything is hardening and I have no time. But I mean, this is the end result, I guess. It's kind of good. And it's kind of funny, I didn't record it, but my reaction of trying to lift this thing, oh my God, is it so heavy with all of these clamps on it? It was insane. But I'm curious to know how these miters are going to look. This is the next day, obviously. So let's go ahead and remove all the clamps and take a look at how these miters are. I mean, honestly, it's not too bad. I mean, it's not as tight as I was hoping, but it's not horrible. Like, this is definitely the worst one out of all of them. But I mean, I'm just happy that the maple lined up all the way around because that would have looked really ugly if not. Before we come back to these miters, I'm going to use a chisel to kind of just take off this glue squeeze out from the tops and bottom. I'm also drawing like lines with a pencil on all sides of this. That way I can go back with 80 grit sandpaper to kind of start this process, and then we can see how the miters look after. I normally only do the pencil trick during the 80 grit. That way I know at least everything has been sanded down evenly for the first grit. Now for the miters, I'm going to be using 2 different tricks. One is applying some glue to the mitered edge that you want to fix and just kind of spreading it in there. Then at this point, I'm going to use a screwdriver to kind of rub it along that miter joint, which kind of folds them in. And then also I'm going to sand, which is going to send the dust into that wood glue and help kind of seal up that edge. And it honestly turned out pretty good. I know this fix can kind of be a little bit of a rookie fix, but I think in this scenario, it was my best option. Now I'll save you guys by skipping all the sanding grits, but this is me after I raised the grain. I sprayed it with some water and I'm letting it just kind of dry up. But I went through, so I went 80, 120, 150. I don't have any 180s on me, so I skipped that, did the spray down, and now I'm doing 220. That's just to break all the grain, so if anyone does decide to wash this later. But it looks all good and is ready to go, so let's go ahead and jump over to our coaster set. Now I decided to go ahead and just use one of these other scraps for the base because I didn't really like how the other base turned out. So we're going to go ahead and cut this to make a nice square edge. And then what I'm going to be doing is cutting in some slots for the actual coasters to sit into. I would have preferred to have them sit on an angle, but honestly, I just couldn't really figure out the best way to do it without being unsafe. So I think this is going to look okay. As for finishing, I'm going to be using tung oil. If you guys watched my incense holder video, which I'll link in the top right corner or in the description if you want to watch it after this, that was my first time using tung oil and I loved it. So let's go ahead and use it on this serving tray. Now, tung oil technically isn't food safe, but it is after it's fully cured. So just a little note for you guys out there in case you want to use tung oil. Now, hear me out. I honestly hate making these serving trays because the glue squeeze out and the sanding is so annoying. If anyone has any ideas, let me know down in the comments on what you guys do to reduce the glue squeeze out or have less of a sanding session whenever it comes to making these things. But for anyone who also shares that opinion of not enjoying that, there is one thing I will say is the tung oil definitely has made the seams look a lot better and a lot more hidden. So you don't see that glue squeeze out if you didn't get all of it off when you were trying to sand, which I didn't. Now I'm going to go ahead and buff all the axis off. I let it sit for about 15 minutes and then we're going to come back in 24 hours and do a second coat. All right, let's check out these final results. I hope you guys enjoyed the build, and if you want to see another video where I turned cutting board scraps into profit, make sure to click this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe down below if you want to see more.